First of all, thanks for those two previous presentations. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, I don't, to be honest, think I've got that much more to say. So I'll just wrap it up there. But no, let me battle on regardless. I'm going to make under the three headings, good, bad, and ugly. I'm going to make 4 points each. Good is more or less how we would like the world to be and how the potential could be exploited. And that requires a few things. First, it requires a deep and changed understanding in the public health community and the world at large on how tobacco harm reduction works. It is not a smoking cessation product. It is a rival value proposition to smoking for the way to consume nicotine, a relatively innocuous consumer lifestyle drug. We need to tune us on trivial and implausible risks. And we need much more mindfulness of the perverse consequences of blundering in with clumsy, excessive regulation. Second, we need a new narrative about this in the public. The relentless negativity has to stop. People have to start seeing where the benefits are emerging, listening to the smokers who quit smoking, listen to the stories of harm reduction, and start to see the upside. We have to stop the tirade of false and misleading science and replace it with a story that is more hopeful and focuses on the benefits. Thirdly, we need to shift to a risk proportionate regulatory regime. Okay, now this means being very tough on the most harmful products and being much more liberal and open-minded about the far less harmful products. And you can apply that in all the areas, whether it's tax, advertising, warning, consumer messages, control of ingredients, control of access, age restrictions, permission to use the products in public places, and so on. And the reason is you have two competing value propositions. You have the smoking value proposition here, which regulation attempts to degrade, and then the vaping or tobacco harm reduction proposition, which regulation, fiscal, communication should try to enhance and thereby encourage people to move. And then finally, on the good side, we need a deep rethink of nicotine. People are locked up in the wrong understanding of nicotine, not a particularly harmful drug, it's not even that addictive in most of its forms, but it is a popular consumer drug, and it could take its place alongside caffeine and moderate alcohol consumption as a legitimate lifestyle drug. It's legal everywhere. It's just legal in forms that are particularly harmful. So the question for the long term is, what does the consumer market in nicotine look like? It's not necessarily one about tobacco harm reduction. It's about the future of nicotine consumption. And we see the four product categories already emerging: vaping products, heated tobacco products, smokeless tobacco products, and oral nicotine products. They form a basis for the future of the nicotine market going forward with relatively low risks. Okay, now let's go to the dark side and talk bad. Okay, now here, this is closer to where things are rather than where they ought to be. And the first point I would say is that a dominant narrative is taking hold and is getting worse over time, which has been led by various extremists, but is now entering the mainstream, which is that there's no real difference in risk between smoking and the tobacco harm reduction products, the smoke-free products, and that if there is, it's all lost in some mire of future uncertainty that we cannot unpeel. This is completely wrong. There is absolutely no doubt that these products are very much less harmful than smoking, but it is becoming a dominant narrative that there is little difference and not much to choose between them. Allied to that, the second point is various forms of regulatory paradigm are now being applied to these products. And there are basically three. The first is the one favored by many of the anti-vaping activists, which is prohibition. And you see this coming from the union, from WHO, from the Bloomberg-funded complex. Just ban it. It's all too difficult. Make it go away. Just ban it. The second is, well, if it says it's a smoking cessation product and helpful, treat it like a medicine and regulate it like a pharmaceutical. And the third is, these are all tobacco products, just regulate them in exactly the same way as you do smoking. And therefore, in doing that, in fact, in all three of those things, you are creating a regulatory barrier to entry to the much safer products, the entrants, while protecting the market position of the incumbents, which are the combustible products, which are the ones that do all the harm. And that is proceeding. We're seeing some pushback, to be honest, regulation. Almost everything you can think of is being done to degrade the value proposition for the smoke-free products, raising taxes, talking them down, pretending there's more harms than there are, talking up addiction, talking up brain disease. Most of these things have no basis in truth, or at least a fleeting, tenuous relation to truth, but they are having the effect of making the transition from smoking to vaping much less attractive. And then finally, the effect I think that we'll see from this is not what the anti-vaping activists want. We'll see more smoking, or not at least what they say they want, more smoking, more black markets, more home-based workarounds. We may see less nicotine use, but we're certain to see a lot more harm as people will stick with smoking, and they will find that the black markets are harmful and damaging compared to having a legal and regulated supply. So finally, I want to go on to the ugly part of the story. And this is not what's happening, but the way it's being done. And that really, really is ugly. And what we're seeing is what I call the development of an anti-THR, anti-nicotine, anti-vaping propaganda complex. Okay, now this is a complicated beast. It consists of funders, scientists, academic, grant-seeking activists, allies in the media, allies in politics. It consists of a wide variety of actors, all reinforcing each other's messages and all adding to the overall effect on policy and public perception of these products. And that is growing, and it is very, very highly sophisticated and very, very well funded, notably by philanthropic organizations like Bloomberg, which have their fingers in so many pies, it's frightening. They are everywhere, in the WHO, in the World Bank, in the activist organizations, in CDC. This is really insidious operation that is going on here and creating almost an imaginary world in which these products are criticized and challenged. We're seeing science used as propaganda. The journals, the journal editors, the peer review system is routinely failing. As someone who reviews the output from the tobacco control, activism and science propaganda system, it is terrible. Absolutely infantile errors being made all the time. Things that simply should not clear peer review are waved through and then form a pathway of citations for others to use in the future. We're seeing also essentially the maintenance of a permanent and irreconcilable conflict with the tobacco industry. Now, I've no particular love for the tobacco industry, but if you have a mindset that they're the enemy of choice and they always will be, you don't leave them any room to get out of the merchants of death business. You don't allow them to transition to a smoke-free world. You're holding back the change in the marketplace as to what they're doing. This group, this complex, is indifferent to the perverse consequences. How often do you see them going back to look at the consequences of flavor bans, excessive regulation, high taxes, and looking at what it did to smoking? Almost never, if not ever. and they are not doing that. They are not evaluating the consequences of their actions. Tell me the last time any of them evaluated the effect of the snooze ban in the European Union. It's never been done. It's just not something that they see as their responsibility. And in doing that, they remain completely unaccountable. And then finally, there's an attitude here, which I find despicable. And it's a little intangible, but to me, it's a complete lack of empathy and humility, a lack of connection with the at-risk populations, with the lives of the often vulnerable and disadvantaged people who are smokers, the economic burdens, the consequences of battering them with incredibly high taxes, stigmatizing them, excluding them, and then on top of that, taking away the most important options that they have to get away from that. I mean, I can't just compute that. That is so despicable in so many ways. Final point. So to summarize, I'm really hoping, and I hope everyone's trying for good. It's bad and it's getting worse, and it's certainly very ugly. And we have to confront that ugliness because that's the reality of what's driving this. Thank you very much.